Well, good morning, everyone. I presume everybody's wide awake now that Reverend Barber led our revival. He's amazing. No? He's great. We want to follow up on this whole issue of food insecurity. For Americans, it's a truly ironic dilemma when we have so many people in this country who are at risk of type 2 diabetes because they're overweight. And it's so easy to forget that food insecurity is a big problem in the United States, but it's devastating in a lot of the places where Cindy McCain works with the World Food Program because of the combination of the impact of the Ukraine war, COVID, and a whole variety of natural disasters which have made agriculture more problematic. But I think before this Ukraine conflict developed, most people didn't know that 30% of the world's wheat is grown in that little space of land between Russia and Ukraine. So I think I'd like to start with you, Cindy. How do you see this food security problem worldwide? What do you need? What should all of us be doing to help?
Well, Mr. President, thank you very much for covering this issue and for letting us up here be able to inform the general public, but also make sure that you understand the depth of this. From the World Food Program perspective, the world's on fire. This is nothing to play with now. This is not just an issue that exists. This is desperation. We have hundreds of millions of people that are not just food insecure, but don't know where their next meal is going to come from. We have hundreds of millions of children who are food insecure. And so what does that mean? That means more migration. It means more people moving and fighting and turmoil beginning and starting and continuing. In our case, we view food insecurity as a national security issue because that's what's going to happen if we don't step up and make sure that we have enough money globally to be able to take care of these people so they stay in their homes, stay in their communities, and feed their families, and are able to feed their families. So, Mr. President, I never have good news. My job is not the good news agency at all. I wish I did on occasion. But it's time that not just the governments step up to this, but that the private sector joins us in this. Because without the private sector, we're not going to be able to supplement what we really need. And we are half the amount of funding right now that we should be in this particular situation. Lastly, I'll speak directly to Africa, North Africa particularly. We're looking at just a spark, and the entire area is going to implode with chaos, and more chaos than is already there, but no food. So that sends people running. I am scared for the first time in this job. I'm scared for what's going to happen.
Jose.
On that note.
Uh-oh. No, this is interesting. I was thinking about all the places we've been together over the years. How you came to my library when COVID was wreaking havoc. And we served almost 1 million meals there. But we were in the Caribbean when the storms came in 2017. You've been everywhere. I remember we were standing with that young married couple on their little 7 acres in Puerto Rico, and they showed us how they had grown something on every inch of land. All the places and all the things you've done, and what you did on the border of Colombia and Venezuela, which meant a great deal to me. So we're now dealing I think, with a terrible moment in the conflict in Ukraine. And so just using that as an example, how are you approaching these crises, and how can you help in terms of being a pipeline for what Cindy talked about? I think there's a lot more money out there that the private sector would give for food insecurity, particularly in emergency situations, if they knew how it was going to be spent and what the consequences would be.
Well, Mr. President, talking about Ukraine, Ukraine for us, for World Central Kitchen, was very much the last 14 years that we have gaining experience. I believe World Central Kitchen, we're an organization that we are a baby organization. We are just learning from the big brothers, learning from the men and women of organizations like World Food Program. I've been very lucky to be with many of them sometimes in different parts of the world and learning about the amazing work they do every day. And by the way, I think this is a moment to give a huge round of applause to every single humanitarian out there around the world with boots on the ground, feeding people or taking care of people. Can we do that? Great. This always happens, great, when you don't know what you are about to say and you gain time to think about what you are going to say next. This is a tip. But in Ukraine, something very simple happened. Something needs to be very clear. We all need to be next to President Zelensky and next to the people of Ukraine. Another thing needs to be very clear. Why is World Food Program in Ukraine feeding and World Central Kitchen feeding when Ukraine is a country that exports huge amounts of food? Why are we there? World Central Kitchen went there in part because when chaos happens, the infrastructure of a country breaks down. And what we did was not bringing food from the outside, but just trying to reorganize the broken infrastructure of no supermarkets, places with no bridges, farmers that were stopping producing, and start trying to build it again. When restaurants were closed, what we tried to do, like, hey, we need to feed this shelter and this hospital. Can you open? And so we support you with money so you can feed all these people. We put together more than 500 restaurants, doing more than 500,000 hot meals in the early days, weeks, and months of the war to take care of all those refugees. Who better, my people, than restaurants and caterings and kitchens in hotels to feed people? So this is what World Central Kitchen does. We don't try to reinvent infrastructure. We are an organization that we are not about hardware. We are more about software. We are here, we look around, what do we have that we can take care of people? And this is very much what we did. When you mentioned that this goes connected with the issue we're facing in the world today, Cindy is right, this food is a national security issue. President Clinton governments need to be taking care of giving more importance to food. Presidents of every country must have a national security food advisor next to them. And you remember that everybody tells you that there's enough food to feed the world? You remember that we keep saying it's enough food to feed the world? But what happened? We are wasting food. Imagine when we wake up one day and there is no anymore that we waste, but imagine one day that we don't have enough food to feed the world. Ukraine, I just came back visiting farmers, and many of them told me that this crop this year, the crop is going to be 50% from before the war. A country that feeds 500 million people every year with the grain they produce, this is for United Nations, for every government in the world, to be taking a serious look at the situation of Ukraine, because it's not only a war for Ukraine to gain their freedom, but it is also a war to feed the world. This is the situation we're facing right now.
I agree with that. Louise agreed to come back and do double duty here because why don't we not be political, I'll commit the truth here. The president of Malawi was jammed up in UN traffic.
As one does.
Aggravated, I'm ashamed to say, it's not his fault, by President Biden's arrival, which got more security people and traffic directors involved. The poor man is doing his best to get here. And he's really done an interesting, I think, set of work on this. But I asked Louise to come back because I think it's important to point out that it does matter where this food is grown. And we do need more resilient agriculture from small farmers that are providing the food where people live or near where they live. And it's a huge deal. I have spent a lot of years trying to convince people that this was a charitable project worth investing in, almost always without success. The biggest ones of these programs are funded by, well, Aliko Dangote funds 180,000 farmers in Nigeria. And almost all the other programs are smaller in number. We have never had an international program committed to funding millions and millions and millions of small farmers to produce food and keep it where they live. And a lot of these people are every bit as productive as big industrial scale agriculture if they had the feed, seed, fertilizer, farming techniques, and the ability to move the food from the ground where it's grown to the place where it will be consumed. So I thought you could maybe say a little about that. How do you feel that the current situation in the world is affecting your small farmers and your vision of resilient farming, and what else do you think we need to do?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. President, for having me on this panel. I have big shoes to fill with the president of Malawi stuck in traffic, but I'm grateful to him for being stuck in traffic. I cannot lie. But the fact is, Mr. President, nearly $500 billion worth of agricultural subsidies exist and are circulating around the world. But it's very hard to feel that when you're in this tiny pocket of San Fernando and Camarines Sur, which is, you've never even heard of it, it's an 8-hour drive from Manila. And most of these subsidies are going into unsustainable agriculture, large monocropping. And how can we transition that into regenerative agriculture? How do we put it in the hands of the farmers who need them the most? In fact, agriculture and farming and food is inherently a political act. All of us eat 3 times a day. We're all reliant on a farmer somewhere. And frankly, they're the most underserved, underprivileged group in places like the Global South that provide most of our food. It's a climate act as well. Less than 1% of climate finance was put into food and land use systems in, I think it was 2020 or 2021. So I think it's really important that we start looking at the intersections of our food systems and how we can give farmers more autonomy and more freedom to act within where they're working on, and also have a seat at the table, provide these solutions that already exist within their communities. Again, wisdom from hundreds of years of knowledge passed down from grandmother to grandson, and be able to modernize that and also scale it in a way that we can either find the parallels of places across the world, whether that's farms here in the US and technology in the Philippines, or whether that's also putting farmers on policy tables, on understanding where climate finance or even finance in general needs to get on the ground. And beyond that, I think it's also important to have more than hundreds of thousands of movements that empower them, because this is a heavily stigmatized industry where farmers are oftentimes associated to poverty or unsustainable development. So essentially, we need more people showing and giving power to farmers, and we need hundreds of thousands of more initiatives like Chef Jose Andres's kind of programs, and hopefully we need more hundreds and thousands of you, Chef, across the world mobilizing within the communities that they're doing that to bring food and close those consumer and production gaps.
Thank you. Cindy, what's the budget of the World Food Program?
Last year, it was 16 billion. This year, we're down to half of that. Now, why? Why is that? It's not because anything was misspent or any of that. It's just the needs are such now. The needs are greater. There's more people. There's more inability to move around and to get things done. We're affected by cost, COVID, climate change, and all the others. And also, countries have kind of decided they're not interested. I'll be honest with you. There's a certain lack of interest in food security now from, I'll speak to the EU, I'll speak to other European countries, other Middle Eastern countries, et cetera. We need everybody in this fight. This is not a fight for the United States alone. We need absolutely everybody we can get. And it's not just about emergency food, it's about sustainability. It's about giving these farmers, these prospective farmers, these refugees who are in camps, the tools to build a little farm and feed their families. No one wants to leave their home. No one does, but you will do anything to feed your family. So we that's another portion of what WFP does, is the sustainability and the long-term buy-in for all of this. What we're in, as Chef Andrea said, we're definitely in Ukraine, and part of what we are doing is helping a demining organization demine the agricultural plots so that they can farm again. But that's a huge problem within Ukraine, and it's going to be a long-lasting problem too. I know.
2 farmers died yesterday.
Yeah.
Only because they were trying to take care of their land. Just 2 farmers died yesterday.
So
Stepped on mines.
And the tractor just blew away.
blew up. Yeah. No. You're exactly right.
It's just to put it in perspective. Every week is farmers dying because they are trying to feed their families.
Yeah.
Yay! Thank you. Give him a hand for.
Hello.
Can I sit by you?
May I apologize on behalf of my city for the traffic? We're glad to see you, President Chakera.
Thank you.
And we've just been talking about the current state of food insecurity because of all the people who need access, because of the demands that are particular to Ukraine,
Right.
because of the falling international support. And Louise is from the Philippines, and she was describing how much is spent subsidizing farmers that doesn't reach to the individual farmers
Right.
who determine literally life or death for a lot of people in a lot of communities. Now, this president has an interesting background. He has lots of education in both his religious studies and in his work today in agriculture. So if you're rested up enough,
All right.
tell us what the state of play is in Malawi, where I've had my foundation has had the honor to work for many years on many things, including agriculture. And
That's right.
how are you doing, and what does the world need to know about the condition of sustainable food in Africa?
Well, Mr. President, it's a long question, but I'll see what I can do. the food situation in Malawi particularly, and then you can talk about Africa in general, has been exacerbated by various factors. In about 5 or so years in Malawi, we have had several cyclones. We've had incidents of flooding and sometimes even drought in certain parts. And the most devastating cyclone this year, Freddie, in all of our history, has been catastrophic. I mean, over 1,000 people were killed, fields and crops just washed out, whole villages obliterated, and 2.6 million people affected, infrastructure destroyed. Right now, we have close to 5 million people food insecure. But that has been a kind of building up system because of the climate shock, climate change shocks. And so with that, and then you add the war in Eastern Europe, because what that did was to affect supply chain issues, including food supplies across the continent. And all of a sudden, prices of food and fuel and fertilizers, just went up. And many countries like Malawi that are struggling with the debt burden, we just couldn't have all of the resources needed to even recover sufficiently to make sure everybody is covered. Now, we have this a program we call AIP, which is Agricultural Inputs kind of program to help farmers, many of whom are subsistent. We call them smallholder farmers. But we do help subsidize so that they have at least sufficient food to cover them a year per household. So we want to have food sufficiency on a household level, but we also want to have food sufficiency on a national level. Now, what happens is when these villages and their fields get wiped out like they did, then on a household level, there's hardly any food. And so what we want to do now is to make sure that we have mechanized mega farms and then try to teach folks how to get in groups, cooperatives, produce more of quality and mechanize so that, agriculture should not be looked at as subsistence, just so I can survive a season or a day, but big business. And that's what's happening in Malawi now, so that the hope is coming back to say we can have food sufficiency and more to export. Because Malawi is blessed with arable land and beautiful valleys and lakes. The biggest lake, Malawi, third largest in Africa. And we don't see why we should be struggling. So the investment that is needed is in agriculture, big time, so that we can then forget about food insecurity. Does that make sense?
I'm a farm boy. It makes a lot of sense to me. You want to say anything? What's your reaction to what he said?
I think it's incredible to see the amount of work being mobilized within food systems, such a big industry that we're working in, and to think we need 70% more food by 2050. And FAO recently released a report that shows we have 60 years worth of harvest left. So it's work like this that needs to accelerate in order to be able to empower farmers and make sure that farmers have the resilience and resources they need. But also I've noticed we've had a lot of issues and problems around food systems. It's constantly, as you mentioned, you never come with good news, isn't that right? But fact is, there is a lot of optimism and hope for food systems. We can reimagine development using farming techniques and practices and technologies. Hopefully we can one day build cities where infrastructure is resilient, where forests are integrated as part of it. And I hope that countries like ours in the Global South are going to create that model and that scale because we have the capacity and we have the history and the land to do so.
I was going to try to figure out, because we've got 5 minutes left for 4, but Jose, most of the time when I see you, we've been working in some place where the wheels run off. Something terrible's happened, a natural disaster, a political disaster, or whatever. And we don't have to deal with these questions that they're dealing with because we just have to produce the food needed right now under these circumstances. How should we be organizing so that we not only respond better, more quickly, more fully to immediate emergencies, but also build in a more resilient agriculture system so people can feed themselves on a regular basis where they live, in good times and bad?
Well, Mr. President, I'm still doing my MBA and learning with boots on the ground. That's why I try to go everywhere to try to figure out this question. I think everybody here is trying to figure out this question. One thing is clear, the recipes of the past are not working. Yes, it's good things happening here and there, but still we keep talking about hungry children, hungry people. The number keeps increasing. Therefore, we need to start writing, in many ways, new recipes. Let's take a look what's going on in Ukraine. President, here you said that they have a very good fertile land. But much of the grain that is produced in Ukraine today is being exported to other countries around the world, many of them Africa. My question to everybody is, and I want Ukraine to do well because they need to sell what they produce somewhere, but why Africa, that still has many areas that they are not maximized to its full farming potential? They have to keep receiving grain from another country far away. Why we cannot start really investing so those people are self-sufficient? In humanitarian aid, yeah, you can clap, big way, but listen, I was very proud of the role of America when Haiti earthquake happened, but it's just to give you a detail. And I thought USAID did great, and I think the response was something as an American, as a citizen, I was proud. Can you always do things better? Yeah, but let me show you one thing. Talking now about Republicans and Democrats in Congress, and about refugees and immigrants in Texas. And now I lost you, right? Because I'm talking about immigrants and refugees in Texas and Haiti 14 years ago. And you're saying, Jose, you are really naughty. Yeah, I am. We send so much food for free in Haiti that we put hundreds, if not thousands, of farmers out of job. That means that doing good is not good enough. We must do a smart good, because by not buying from local farmers in Haiti, they went hungry in the process that on paper where we were bringing food. We made that country in a way poorer by doing it wrong. Let's start investing, buying locally. That's why in World Central Kitchen, when I can, listen, in Ukraine we invested a ton of money, thanks to the American people supporting us. Over 400 million, probably more. As much as we could, we bought food that was local. In the process of a country that was at war, we were trying to help that country to do better in Texas and in Tijuana, many of them Haitians. They are the same Haitians that during 14 years, they are trying to find a place to belong. Therefore, when you have a senator in Congress in the United States of America that only will give international American aid in the form of food versus in the form of money, they are creating the problem that then we have refugees in the rich countries because the only thing they're trying to do is knock on the door because they want to feed their children. That's why I created the Global Food Institute in partnership with George Washington after 12 years with a class, that we bring the whole of government to try to be more strategically and more pragmatic on when we make a decision to make sure that the decision solves problems, but that decision and those policies don't create bigger problems. Subsidies, I am a guy that I will stop subsidies tomorrow, especially in the big companies. If we give subsidies to the big companies, let's give subsidies to the small farms. Subsidies for all or subsidies for any. As you see, the food, I don't think it's anything more important than food in the world. Because the energy that moves humanity is not the gas that goes into my car, it's the food that feeds all of us. That's what we've been mentioning, that food needs once and for all recognized as a true national food security issue, and more importance and more investment needs to be done in making sure that our governments have a more holistic food policy. Right now, it doesn't exist. Food policy cannot be only in the hands of the Department of Agriculture in every country. Food needs to be part of every single department in every single government so we can find real solutions to solve the problems we are facing in the years to come.
So, having heard all this, if your budget were double tomorrow, what would you spend the money on?
Oh, I would certainly spend it on the needs that we have right now and the serious hot spots, the fires around the world. But I would also spend some of it on science, technology, doing more with less, being a better, more efficient organization. That's in the plan for us. But it's so important that we do that for the very reason that you say, unless we're smart about our money, then we're just wasting it. And so a really smart friend of mine who I love dearly has said to me on more than one occasion, the seeds of terrorism are planted in despair. And so these are the kinds of things that we're looking at and how we have to deal with these things on a daily basis. And also reminding everybody that I feel the same frustration that you do with the Congress that doesn't always understand what we're doing. And it can no longer be just about emergency food. It has to be about sustainability. It has to be about helping people help themselves along the way. And so that's the message that we're trying to give, is not only do we desperately need help now, but for the long term, so that we can keep people at home. And people are happier, they're healthier. They're certainly more generous in terms of who they are as a community, but more importantly, their children don't wind up being recruited by terrorist organizations because the terrorist organizations are feeding them. That's what we're faced with right now. I want to congratulate Malawi on what you do, because I wish every country had the kind of vision that you do with food and food security and food sustainability. Thank you for that.
We're out of time, but let me summarize. One, however big the problem is, there are always gifted, good farmers in every country with the capacity to do more if they have the support they need. And so we should emphasize the empowerment of people at the local level. Two, on the other extreme, there are always natural or political disasters that cannot be met by even the best kind of resilience planning and siloing of food or whatever without people coming in. And Jose Andres is probably the best person that ever lived at doing that. but he's also trying to fix the other things. So, and the third thing we learned is that people from the outside who want to help need to make first be sure they do no harm. And secondly, help now with a view toward making it possible for people to flower and stand on their own and chart their future. This is very rewarding work. It's amazing, it's important. And sometimes, quite often, it's life or death. So we need to keep getting better and better and better at it. And we should pontificate less and do more. Let's give them a hand.